My brothers and sisters, how do you normally picture the face of Jesus? Well, I know that I tend to enjoy seeing Jesus' face as being full of love and compassion, peace and joy, possibly sometimes even a little sad or even sobbing on occasion. But today we have a most unusual portrait of the face of Jesus. Jesus is downright angry. And that's not the way we normally tend to picture Jesus now, is it? Angry. So just what is it then about the situation that Jesus encountered that day that made him so angry? Well, I've wondered about that very same thing myself, and the best way that I know of to get some clues about it is to look at some of the other places in the Gospels where Jesus gets angry or becomes indignant or suggests some dire consequences for someone's actions. And so 3 major things come to mind for me. First is when Jesus says that the consequences of leading the little ones away from God will be worse than getting thrown into the sea with a huge millstone tied around your neck. That's pretty dire, isn't it? Well, the second time that Jesus got angry is when Peter tried to talk Jesus out of listening to his Father's voice and doing his Father's will. Still another time, Jesus angrily confronted the Pharisees about making people jump through numerous hoops, making it nearly impossible for them to experience God's tender love and mercy and forgiveness, God's healing and reconciliation. Sisters and brothers, are you beginning to see a pattern here? What is it that makes Jesus angry then? Well, it would seem to be any attempt to block or exclude another person or group of persons from access to God. Any attempt to block or exclude another person or group of persons from access to God. That really makes Jesus angry. And if it makes Jesus angry, I would imagine it makes God angry too. Now, we've always pointed to the money changers in today's gospel as being the bad guys that really upset Jesus, haven't we? But the deeper meaning of what was really going on in that outer court of the temple that day is what Jesus was laser focused on. You see, in Jesus' day, the temple had 5 sections, or 5 courts, so to speak. There was the center court, the inner court, which was called the Holy of Holies. Then around that was another court called the Court of Priests. That was the second court. Then there was the third court, which was the Court of Israel, mostly reserved for men who were Jews. Now, the fourth court was the Court of Women. Sorry, ladies. The fifth court, however, the outer court of the temple, was the Court of Gentiles. These courts were seen as 5 concentric circles of sanctity. The design made room for everybody in the temple of God. It was a universal house of God for all the nations, where every man and woman on earth could find a place to pray, an opportunity to draw near to God, who loves them all, by the way. But over the years, the priests started to forget that. And they decided that the temple of God was meant for the Jews alone. So they decided to turn the court of Gentiles into a place of commerce, a holy marketplace, as it were, for the selling of animals required for sacrifice and for the exchange of money. And so the court of Gentiles was no longer even considered a part of God's house of prayer for all, but instead it had become a marketplace, no longer suitable for prayer. Now, the court of Gentiles is where Jesus made the whip and cleansed the temple. His actions made a clear and unmistakable statement that the court of Gentiles was just as holy as all the rest of God's house. Just as holy. God is the God of all, not just the God of an elite or a select group. Brothers and sisters, there are many among us today, still today, who label others as being undesirables, an unwanted child resulting from pregnancy, maybe. Those who are incarcerated or on death row, maybe. Perhaps people from other races or other cultures rather than our own. Undocumented immigrants, gays or lesbians, or our military enemies, perhaps. Sisters and brothers, these are the little ones, the Gentiles, the Samaritans, the tax collectors, and the prostitutes of our day. Many here among us actually believe that the exclusion of others, undesirables that is, will somehow keep us strong. Some of us out of fear, and others out of downright selfishness and hatred, believe that excluding, rejecting, or ignoring the needs of these undesirables will somehow keep us safe. Safe from what? But you know, St. Paul tells us in our second reading today that the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. And Jesus, in our gospel today, refers to himself as the temple of God, the house of God. And our Catholic faith teaches us that through the sacraments, especially baptism and Eucharist, we too are temples or houses of God. But if you and I forget who and what we really are, and arrange our house so as to exclude the undesirables of our day, then what kind of response do you think we can expect from Jesus? His foolishness is wiser than human wisdom. His weakness is stronger than human strength. And as our psalm tells us today, he has the words of everlasting life. Listen to him. Listen to him.